Al-A'rabu, the Bedouins. Who are the A'rab? Who are they? The descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. They speak Arabic, live in the desert as well. So Al-A'rab, the Bedouin Arabs, they are ashaddu kufran wa nifaqan. They are stronger in their disbelief and also in their hypocrisy. Wa ajdaru, and they're more likely. أَلَّا يَعْلَمُوا حُدُودَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَى رَسُولِهِ. They're more likely not to know the limits of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed to His Messenger. وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ, and Allah is knowing and wise. Now in this ayah, another type of hypocrites are mentioned. Which ones? Those who lived in the outskirts of Medina. Those who lived outside of Medina, in the desert. The Bedouins. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about them? That the A'rab, these Bedouins, who live in the desert, they are ashaddu kufran. They are more intense in their disbelief. Than who? Than the people of the city. Than the people of Medina, than the people of Makkah, than the people of Ta'if. Okay? The people who live in the desert, their kufr is much more intense. If they're disbelievers, their disbelief is much more intense. And if they have nifaq, their nifaq is also much more stronger. Compared to who? Compared to the people of the city. Moreover, وَأَجْدَرُوا, and they're more likely. Ajdaru from the root letters, Jim, Dal, Ra. Jadra. Jadra is to be worthy of something. What does it mean? To be worthy of something. It is when something is more suitable, more apt, more prone. So, وَأَجْدَرُوا, they are more prone that Allah يَعْلَمُوا, that they would not know حُدُودَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ, the limits which Allah has sent down. What does the hudud refer to? The commands, the prohibitions. Remember we learned earlier, تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ, these are the limits set by Allah, فَلَا تَقْرَبُوهَا فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. And we learned earlier that hudud give two meanings, commands as well as prohibitions. So, they are more likely not to know the commands, the prohibitions which Allah has revealed upon His Messenger. Wallahu alimun hakim, and Allah is fully aware of His creation, and He's also hakim in the way He deals with them. So we see in this ayah that hypocrisy is more common in who? Is more stronger in who? In the desert dwellers. It is more possible in them. It is more likely to develop in them. And if it develops in them, it is much more stronger. Why? Because of two reasons. First of all, because they live in the desert. And secondly, because they are distant from the Quran. So what if they live in the desert? Is there some kind of bias against them? No. The fact is that a person who lives in the desert, away from the city, you can say in an uncivilized place, in an uncivilized land, in a lawless land, where people are not well educated, where people don't have basic knowledge, where people don't even have worldly knowledge, then what happens? In their mannerism, they become very rough, they become very crude. Remember that if a person is knowledgeable, even if only in the worldly sense, it refines him. Doesn't it? And the knowledge benefits that person. It makes him honest, it makes him logical, it makes him more straightforward. Compared to someone who is away from, you can say, urban life, from a civilized land, from living amongst educated and knowledgeable people. Because in the desert you face a lot of harshness. When you live in a house, what does that mean? You have to maintain your house. Correct? You have to clean your house. But if you're living in a desert, you camp one tent here, and then tomorrow you take it off and you go elsewhere and you camp it over there. You don't have any respect for things. You don't care about things at all. At the same time, there is no discipline. There is no proper order to life. So this is why in their mannerism, they're more harsh. They're more crude. And because they're less knowledgeable in the worldly sense, this is why they are stronger in their nifaq, in their kufr. This is one reason behind their hypocrisy. The second reason is that they are distant from the Qur'an, from the people of the deen, from the deen. This is why hypocrisy is more possible in them. وَأَجْدَرُوا أَلَّا يَعْلَمُوا حُدُودَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. Why did they not know? Because they were living in the desert. If they were living in Medina, they would come and listen to the Qur'an every day from the Prophet ﷺ in salah, wouldn't they? Similarly, there were so many people living over there in the city of Medina who were believers. They were Ashabul Suffah. So many companions. So when you're in righteous people, when you're in knowledgeable people, that also refines you. That also makes you honest. So there are two reasons given over here. First of all, the fact that they live in the desert, and secondly, the fact that they are distant from the Qur'an. The more exposed a person is to the world, the better it is for him. This is why we should expose our children to, different things, and not keep them in a closed environment. Because it closes their minds. It makes them more rigid, more biased. And we also learned that it is incumbent upon a person that he must stay among who? The knowledgeable ones. And he continues to learn. He continues to learn the deen and revise what he has learned, because learning once is not enough. It wasn't that the Arab were completely ignorant. We learn of so many ahadith in which a Bedouin man came, he asked questions and he left. So many ahadith. They knew they would come, they would learn, they would go away. However, they would not stay. Do you understand? They would not stay. It's not the same to listen to something once and not listen to it again for the next month or two, as opposed to listening to something every single day. So how does hypocrisy develop? When a person stays away from the Qur'an, when a person stays away from the people of the Qur'an, when a person stays away from the deen. This is how hypocrisy develops. Because a person forgets. Because the dunya becomes more attractive to him. And he begins to see people all the time, and he begins to fear people more. When a person is with those people who know the Qur'an, they will correct him. If he makes a mistake, they will encourage him to do good. But if he's away from them, where will he get that encouragement from? Where will he get that motivation from? Who will correct him? Nobody will. Who will tell him more? Nobody will. This is why hypocrisy is more likely to develop in a person who becomes distant from the Qur'an. Who becomes distant from the Qur'an. So what is the cure for nifaq then? What is the cure? Coming closer to the Qur'an. And how do you do that? Just learning once? Doing the course maybe just once and that's it? Move on to something else and forget about it? No. It means that a person constantly stays connected. How? That he reads the Qur'an every day. And he does not just read it, but he learns more about the Qur'an every single day. Remember, learning once is not enough. Learning in one course, in one study is not enough. You need to continue learning. Because each time you open the book, each time you hear something, you learn another aspect. It affects you in a different way. It affects you in another way, which is very important for our actions to improve. For ourselves to amend our mistakes. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man sakana al-badiyata jafa." He who lives in the desert becomes hard-hearted. And this is a reality. This is not a bias against him. How does he become hard-hearted? Because he's living in a harsh environment. He has no interest to learn. Similarly, the hadith continues, وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَ الصَّيْدَ غَفَلَ. He who follows the game, meaning the hunt, as-sayd, he becomes heedless. Now whether this hunt is a real hunt, or it is a hunt on the computer screen, with some remote control in your hand in which you're chasing the hunt. So basically, whether a person is in reality hunting or he's playing a game in which he is hunting, what does it do to a person? It makes him ghafil. It makes him heedless. And this is so true. Because all the time, what is a person thinking about? Okay, next time that I play that game, I'm going to try that. That's what he's concerned about. People spend hours and hours because once you win, then you want to win again, then you want to win again. And this cycle continues. So whoever chases the sayd, then ghafala, he becomes negligent, he becomes heedless. And whoever associates with the rulers, whoever tries to come closer to them, he falls into fitna. He becomes ghafil of Allah as well. He falls into fitna. Whoever strives for leadership or whoever tries to come closer to the leaders. So we see over here that from the hadith, the purpose of the hadith, mentioning the hadith is, the first part, that man sakan al-badiyata jafa, the one who lives in the desert, he becomes hard-hearted. So we see that the city dwellers, they are different to village dwellers. Aisha radhiyallahu anha, she said that a Bedouin man, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked, do you kiss your children? Because he saw that a child was brought, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he kissed that child. So he said, you kiss your children? We do not kiss them. Because for them, kissing your children is like making yourself less, making yourself weak. You understand? So, you kiss your children? We don't kiss them. The Prophet ﷺ said, can I put mercy in your hearts after Allah has removed it from you? When Allah has taken mercy away from you, how can I put it? So we see that some people, they're harsh. Why? Because of the circumstances that they have gone through in their lives. Living alone, living without discipline, living away from people, living away from the Quran. It makes a person harsh. It makes a person crude. It makes a person rough. And there is no pride in this. Because we think to be rough and tough is to be very strong. This is not strength. Not having mercy is not being strong. وَمِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ, and among the A'rab are who? مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ, the one who takes, the one who considers, مَا يُنْفِقُ, what he spends in the way of Allah, as مَغْرَمًا, as a loss. From among the A'rab, there are those who consider what they spend in the way of Allah as a maghram. What is it that they would have to spend in the way of Allah? For example, zakat. They would consider it as a loss. Maghram is from the root letters ghain, ra, mim. Ghain, ra, mim. And ghurm is such financial loss that a person incurs for no fault, for no mistake, for no khiyana. A part of his money is taken away from him. He is fined for something he never did. You understand? Like for example, if a person is speeding and he gets a speeding ticket, is that genuine? Does he deserve it? Yes. Similarly, if a person is living in a particular country and he gets some benefits, and in return he has to pay a tax, is that understandable? Yes, it is. A person is attending a class or something and he has to pay the fees. Is that acceptable? It is. It's not a fine. But let's say a person goes somewhere with their bag and the bag gets stolen. The bag gets stolen. Recently somebody was mentioning about how somebody did not show up to work. And they were wondering as to where they were. For a few days they didn't show up and they got very worried about him. And then finally that person called and they said they were in jail. They were falsely accused of something. So eventually they had to pay bail. Their family had to pay a bail amount in return for which they were released. I don't know what the story is, but I was just thinking, he didn't do anything. And he had to pay that money to be free, to get out of jail. This is what a maghram is. That when a person incurs a financial loss, not because he did something wrong, not because he needs to pay for something, not because he is being taxed, not because he did some khiyana, for no reason. When you say, it's not fair, this is not fair. So he considers sadaqah or zakat to be a maghram, a tax, a loss, a fine, a burden. That they wonder, what crime did we commit that we have to pay this? What did I do that I have to pay this? I didn't do anything wrong. Why do I have to pay this? Why do I have to give in the way of Allah? وَيَتَرَبَّصُ بِكُمْ, and he waits for you. يَتَرَبَّصُ from tarabbus, to wait. They wait for you, meaning for the believers. Ad-dawa'ir, the turn of events. Ad-dawa'ir is a plural of da'ira. Da'ira from the root letters, dal wa ra. Dara yaduru is to go around in circles. And da'ira is one that goes around. It's fa'il. One that goes around. One that goes around. One that circles. So what does it mean by dawa'ir then? It is understood as a turn of fortune, a change of events. And from this it is understood as a misfortune, a difficulty, a calamity. So they're waiting for times to change, for things to change, not in your favor, but against you, in your loss. They want some difficulty to befall you, some misfortune to befall you. They want you to be in such a situation in which you incur a lot of loss. They want things to change for you. What does it mean by this? The munafiqeen, especially those in the desert, they were waiting that somehow or the other, the Muslims would incur some kind of loss. Like for example, somehow the mushrikeen, the few who have survived, they would come back and they would have another revolution and the Muslims would be overpowered. The Muslims would be defeated. Or that the Prophet ﷺ dies. And when he has passed away, with him, his religion will also be gone. وَيَتَرَبَّصُ بِكُمُ الدَّوَائِرِ. What does Allah say? عَلَيْهِمْ دَائِرَةُ السَّوْءِ. Upon them is the evil da'irah. What does it mean by da'irah again? Misfortune, calamity. Meaning they're the ones who will suffer from an evil calamity, not the believers. Wallahu sami'un alim, and Allah is hearing and knowing. He hears those words that you utter in your heart that you don't even verbalize. And He knows your state. So we see in this ayah that the hypocrite, the munafiq, he does not like the laws of Allah. He does not like the commands that Allah has given, the prohibitions that He has imposed. He does not like them. And he considers them as a great burden. He considers them to be a punishment for a crime that he never committed. Which is why he says, that's not fair. Why do I have to wear the hijab? That's not fair. How come men can marry 4 wives? That's not fair. How come we have to pray 5 times a day? That's not fair. How come we have to go for Hajj? That's not fair. How come we have to pray Fard and Sunnah? That's not fair. For every command, for every prohibition, they say that's not fair. Because they consider what Allah has imposed as a maghram, as a fine, as a loss. And because of this reason, He wishes for some disaster to strike on who? On those who enforce those laws. He wishes that those people who are enforcing those laws upon Him, they should suffer from some disaster, from some misfortune. They can't wait for them to go away. Because once they're gone, then they can go back to how they were before. Things can be normal again. Like for example, if there's an older sibling who tells the younger siblings, we have to pray. Okay, come on, get up for Fajr and pray. Now the younger sibling who does not like to pray, what is he going to wish for? I can't wait until she's married and gone. I can't wait until he moves out. He wants that those people who are imposing the laws of Allah upon him, they should go away. But what does Allah say? The reality is that disaster will strike such a person. So these hypocrites, they were only Muslim by name. They weren't willing to act like a Muslim, to live like a Muslim. They were Muslim only by name. Because if you're really a Muslim, you have to give zakat. You have to pray salah. You cannot say that's not fair. You will accept it willingly. So they were only Muslim by name. Why were they Muslim by name? Just to get some worldly benefits. Just to get some worldly advantages. And we see that after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the majority of these Bedouin Arabs who had become Muslim, the desert dwellers, they left Islam. They became murtad after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he fought against them. He fought against them. Because he said that if a person refuses to pay zakat even, because many of them, they did not say we're not Muslim anymore. They said we're not going to give zakat. But he said that whoever does not give zakat, He's not a Muslim. Because it's an obligation. It's a fard. You cannot differentiate between salat and zakat. And we have learned that in this surah. The importance of zakat even. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu waged war against them. However, we see that all of the A'rab, all of the desert dwellers, they're not the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ But among the Bedouins are who? مَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ Those who believe in Allah and the last day. They are true believers. They are sincere believers. So just because a person is from the desert does not mean that he will definitely be a munafiq. No, we cannot generalize. From among the A'rab are those who truly believe in Allah and the last day. وَيَتَّخِذُ And he considers مَا يُنْفِقُ what he spends in the way of Allah, whether it is zakat, or it is some charity, or it is a financial contribution, or it is what a person spends in jihad. So he considers that to be قُرُبَاتٍ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ as a means of coming closer to Allah. قُرُبَات. قُرُبَات is a plural of قُرْبَة, from the root letters قَاف, را, ba. And قُرْبَة is a means of getting closer to someone. مَا يَتَقَرَّبُ بِهِ That through which a person draws closer. And قُرُبَاتٍ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ What are they? Those good deeds which are a means of coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those good deeds which are a means of coming closer to Allah. Attaining the pleasure of Allah. Attaining high rank and manzila near Him. So they consider spending in the way of Allah as a means of coming closer to Allah. When they spend, they don't spend to show off. They don't spend as if they're being penalized. But they spend in the way of Allah to attain His closeness. Because sadaqah, it draws a person closer to Allah. This is the first reason as to why they spend. Secondly, وَصَلَوَاتِ الرَّسُولِ And they also spend in order to get the prayers of the Messenger. Salawat is a plural of salat. What does salat mean? Prayer. It also means dua. It also means rahmah. And depending on who the word salat is being used for, the meaning changes. If a person is praying salat to Allah, what does it mean? He's performing the salawatul khams. He's praying the salah. Secondly, if the word salah is used for Allah, inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. Allah sends salat. What does it mean by that? It means rahmah, khair, barakah. So Allah's salah from Allah is what? Mercy, blessing, goodness. From the angels, what does it mean by the angel sending salah on someone? Praying for that person, seeking forgiveness for that person. And from the Prophet, salat is for another person, dua for him. So وَصَلَوَاتِ الرَّسُولِ meaning the prayers of the Messenger in his favor. Because the Prophet ﷺ was commanded by Allah that when people bring sadaqah, what should you do? Pray for them. So when they go to give sadaqah, what are they hoping? Closeness to Allah, and they're also wishing to get the prayers of the Messenger. You know how, for example, if you go to a particular gathering, and if you answer the questions that the teacher asks, sometimes the teachers, they give dua. You may have seen that the instructor, they give a dua to the person who gives an answer. So sometimes people are competing just to give the right answer so that they can get the dua. So similarly, you can imagine the time of the Prophet ﷺ, how the Sahaba, they would rush to give sadaqah only to get the dua of the Messenger ﷺ. This is why they give sadaqah. Not to get the praise of the Messenger, but to get him to pray for them. What does Allah say? Allah, unquestionably, there is no doubt about this, that innaha qurbatul lahum. It is definitely a means of closeness for them. They will definitely come closer to Allah by giving the sadaqah. سَيُدْخِلُهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي رَحْمَتِهِ Allah will soon admit them in His mercy. إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful. So we see in this ayah that all of the A'rab are not the same. All of the people are not the same. Therefore, we should not generalize. There are people amongst them who have nifaq. And there are people amongst them who are sincere. And those who are sincere, when they come to give sadaqah, they give in order to come closer to Allah, in order to get the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. We learned that Abi Awfa, he brought sadaqah. And the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him, that Allahumma salli ala ali Abi Awfa. That, oh Allah, send your blessings upon who? On the on the family of Abi Awfa. So from this, we can learn an etiquette. That after the Prophet ﷺ, whoever is in charge for collecting charities, for collecting donations, for a religious cause, then what should he do? He should make dua for who? For those who are giving contributions. He should. Because the Prophet ﷺ was commanded in the same surah, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ بِهَا وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ, and also pray for them. So we should pray for those people who are giving sadaqah. And we also learn from this ayah that if a person wants to please Allah, if a person wants to come closer to Him, then what should he do? He should give sadaqah. This is one of the ways of coming closer to Allah, because Allah says, أَلَا إِنَّهَا قُرْبَةٌ لَهُمْ. Definitely this sadaqah is going to be a means of closeness for them. So if you want to come closer to Allah, what do you need to do? Give sadaqah. Give it in secret. Nobody knows about it. With no man, no adha, no riya. No riya at all. So to summarize all of these ayat that we have learned thus far, there are two attitudes that people have towards the commands of Allah. One is of those people who take the commands of Allah as a burden, as a chore. Again, we have to pray. The Quran is so long. They take it as a chore, as a tax, as a no-fair attitude. With each command they learn, their tension, their worry, their anxiety increases. That, oh my God, I have to do this as well, and I have to do this as well. And on the other hand, there are those who positively and readily accept them, hoping reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are grateful for the fact that they are learning. That alhamdulillah, another way through which I can come closer to Allah, another way through which I can acquire some more good deeds, through which I can fill my boxes with something beneficial, something substantial, something worthwhile. They're happy because they have been provided another opportunity. Let's listen to the recitation.
يعتذرون إليكم إذا رجعتم إليهم قل لا تعتذروا لن نؤمن لكم قد نبأنا الله من أخباركم وسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون سيحلفون بالله لكم إذا انقلبتم إليهم لتعرضوا عنهم فأعرضوا عنهم إنهم رجس ومأواهم جهنم جزاء بما كانوا يكسبون يحلفون لكم لترضوا عنهم فإن ترضوا عنهم فإن الله لا يرضى عن القوم الفاسقين الأعراب أشد كفرا ونفاقا وأجدر ألا يعلموا حدود ما أنزل الله على رسوله والله عليم حكيم ومن الأعراب من يتخذ ما ينفق مغرما ويتربص بكم الدوائر عليهم دائرة السوء والله سميع عليم ومن الأعراب من يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر ويتخذ ما ينفق قربات عند الله وصلوات الرسول ألا إنها قربة لهم سيدخلهم الله في رحمته إن الله غفور رحيم.
Anything you'd like to say?
I was just thinking like desert dwellers, like one of the main reasons why the hypocrisy might be a little more intense than the average person is their lack of knowledge and not being with people who have knowledge. So I think there's so many benefits of knowledge, and I never knew this, that knowledge could actually reduce your chances of being like hypocritical or having those traits.
Exactly, because if you look at it constantly about the hypocrites, what is being mentioned? لا يعلمون, لا يفقهون, لا يشعرون, يعمهون. They wander blindly. They don't see, they don't reflect, they don't learn. So one of the main reasons behind nifaq is lack of knowledge and not practicing that knowledge. Because, for example, the munafiqeen who were in Medina, it's not that they didn't know. They would know. But inshallah we will learn later that they were like khushubu musannada, like wood that is propped against the wall. Who would attend the gatherings of the Prophet ﷺ, but they would sit against the walls, not paying any attention, sitting at the back, not paying any attention at all. They would be listening but not comprehending, learning but not applying. So when a person does that, despite that he knows he doesn't apply, then that increases chances of hypocrisy.
Just to add to that, I was just thinking to myself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the Bedouin people are like this because of their background and because of what their circumstances are. And what we often do is we look at someone and we're just like, oh my God, look what they're doing. And we don't know, what they've been through.
Exactly.
So we should really, this for myself is the hardest thing to do, control your judgment that you come to when you look at someone or when they say something, because you don't know what they've been through. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in your heart and what you're thinking.
And if you look at it, the Prophet ﷺ knew that as well. And look at the way that he dealt with them. In so many ahadith, we learn about how a Bedouin man came, he began demanding from the Prophet ﷺ, and he kept giving. And he put his shawl around the Prophet's neck, and he was almost choking, and he came and urinated in the masjid. But, it's about understanding the other person's background as well. That because of this background, this is why they're behaving in this way. And only then can you work with them. Only then can you deal with them. But something very scary is that when a person stays alone, away from people, that develops hard-heartedness. It doesn't mean that we should be always socializing and not spend any alone time. No. It's good to spend alone time as well. But we should also spend time amongst people because we are social by nature.
Assalamu alaikum. Another thing is that if we know the reward that Allah has for us, and if our intentions are sincerely for Allah, we will enjoy the action.
Yes.
And we will enjoy obeying Allah, and we'll enjoy doing His commands, because we know that we will get Allah's mercy, and we know that we're aiming for the akhirah. But if you're not aiming for Allah's mercy, you're not going to enjoy the action.
Very
you're
true.
just going to see it as a burden, because you're not getting anything out of it.
Very true. Then the difficulty becomes sweet. You enjoy it.
I was just thinking about how yesterday we were talking about some of the characteristics of the hypocrites, and we were talking about treating the symptoms. And sometimes you can't just treat the symptoms because there's a deeper cause. And if you're far from the Quran, then no matter how much you try to treat the symptoms, you're going to keep coming back to it. And you need
So you treat it with the Quran.
Yeah.